First I want to start with what COVID does to the body. So the virus, initially there is an infectivity of the virus, and then the virus enters the cell through a certain receptor. And once within the body, what it does is that there are certain immune responses. These are called as virus restriction factors. So one of them is called interferon. If you have sufficient amount of those viral restriction factors or immune responses, what it does is that the host or the human body is able to limit or prevent the virus from infecting. Now, the second phase is that let's say that the virus eventually is successful in infecting the body, then how do you handle that infection is the second phase of the COVID-19 infection. So there are certain responses that happens. One of them is called as uncontrolled inflammation. It's also called as cytokine storm. And the other thing that happens as a consequence of all this is that there is damage to the lung and the amount of oxygen in the blood is low, which is called hypoxia. And then once these patients are hypoxic, then they get treated and then they get a supply of oxygen back. Now they are not able to handle that oxygen being given back. It's called reoxygenation. And then that causes more damage to the body. Mm-hmm. And the third thing that happens to the body is that because of the excess inflammation and the hypoxia and hypoxia reoxygenation, which is happening in these patients, there is damage to the blood vessels, the cells that line the blood vessels, and results in excess clotting. So one of the things which people are seeing is that patients who got COVID-19, they got very high incidence of what is called as thromboembolism, which is nothing but excessive stickiness of the blood or clotting, which is causing them to have organ dysfunction and causing them to die. So this, in summary, kind of summarizes excess inflammation, excess clotting, and low oxygen and inability to handle that, which is causing this COVID-19 to really kill a lot of people around the world. So now going back to meditation, what happens during meditation? When somebody is meditating…
Can I ask you one question in between?
Sadhguru.
See, if body is reacting to reoxygenation, so what is the standard protocol that all of you are following for this COVID when somebody comes to hospital in a certain, let's say, reasonably serious condition? If oxygenation is not the thing to do, what do you do?
Right. I mean, that's a difficult thing to treat after the disease has set in, Sadhguru. Because once there is hypoxia, and then hypoxia itself is harmful to the body, then you have to correct the hypoxia, then reoxygenation is bound to happen. And as of now, we still don't have a complete understanding or have any therapy to really prevent this cascade of events. So you are forced to treat the hypoxia, but you don't have a way to really prevent this reoxygenation injury from happening. But from previous studies, we know that there are many interventions that can actually limit the reoxygenation injury while we correct the hypoxia. And one of the key pathways that is relevant in preventing this reoxygenation injury is antioxidant responses. So if your innate ability to deal with oxidative stress, otherwise it's called free radicals, and there are mechanisms in the body to deal with the free radicals. If those responses are empowered by any mechanism, whether it is through drug or whether it is through eating or whether it is through meditation, then your ability to handle that reoxygenation induced free radical damage may be more effective. And there are other things people have tried, vitamin C or vitamin E and all kind of chemical strategies, which can also be used to limit the reoxygenation injury. Mm-hmm. But I want to add one more thing, Sadhguru, which could be really interesting. And what the studies have shown is that people who do proper yogic and meditation practices, and at least in one study, they have looked at and shown that glutathione, which is a critical molecule to prevent free radical injury within the cell, the levels of it is significantly increased days or weeks after they start this practice. Mm-hmm. So definitely in terms of preventing the free radical injury or reoxygenation injury, the meditation and yogic practices do really help.